The first time I saw the tree standing tall in my front yard, I knew it wasn't just any tree. It wasn't planted by me, nor by my father, or even his father before him. This tree had been here longer than the houses, longer than the sidewalks, longer than the very idea of a homeowners association. Its branches stretched high, a proud giant with roots deep in the earth, shading my home with dignity and standing as a reminder that nature cannot be tamed by man's petty rules. But, of course, the HOA didn't see it that way. To them, the tree was a problem. Too big, too messy, too unattractive for the uniform look they demanded in the neighborhood. They wanted manicured yards, identical shrubs, matching fences. Oh, my beautiful oak. Well, it stood out too much. The complaints started small. Letters in my mailbox, notes taped to my door. Trim your tree, remove the dead branches, comply with the neighborhood standards. I ignored them because this wasn't just a tree to me. It was history. It was character. It was home. Then, one morning, I woke up to the sound of chainsaws. At first, I thought a neighbor was doing yard work, but when I walked outside, my heart dropped. There they were, the HOA's hired crew standing on ladders, cutting into my tree. Not trimming, not pruning, but hacking it apart. Branches fell like broken arms to the ground, and within hours, half of my tree was gone. I ran out shouting, but they waved papers in my face. Board approval, they said. Community order. They didn't care that this tree was mine, that it had been here long before their rules ever existed. They left me with nothing but a lopsided trunk, a mangled reminder of their arrogance. I stood there in the wreckage, staring at what was left. To them, it was victory. To me, it was heartbreak. But little did they know they hadn't destroyed my tree. They had created something else, something unexpected, something that would soon make my yard the most visited spot in the entire county, because what they left behind turned into a legend. The next morning, I stepped outside with a cup of coffee in hand, only to be greeted by the most pitiful sight I'd ever seen. My beautiful oak tree, the one I had cared for since the day I moved in, stood there, lopsided, butchered, humiliated. One side still lush and green, the other side hacked into a ragged stump. I ran my hand over the rough cuts, and anger boiled inside me. Who gave them the right? Who thought this was okay? I marched straight to the HOA office, slammed the photo of my mutilated tree on their desk, and demanded answers. The board president, a smug man named Harold, leaned back in his chair and smirked. Your tree was violating HOA regulations. It was encroaching on the sidewalk, and we had complaints. So we cut it back. Problem solved. Problem solved. My jaw clenched. I wanted to shout, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, why not notify me first? Why not let me trim it myself? Harold shrugged. 'Cause we don't need permission to enforce the rules. Consider yourself lucky we didn't fine you. Lucky they destroyed half of something living, something that meant more to me than just a tree. That oak had shaded my kids when they played outside. It had been the spot where we hung lanterns for summer evenings, where neighbors gathered during barbecues, and now it was a joke. For the rest of the week, I noticed people slowing down there, cars in front of my house, pointing, laughing, even taking photos of the ridiculous half-tree. Kids on bikes called it the haircut tree as they zipped past. I hated it. But then, something strange began to happen. On Saturday morning, a group of teenagers showed up with cameras. They posed in front of the lopsided oak like it was some kind of tourist attraction. Later that afternoon, a family parked their car, walked up, and asked if they could take pictures with the famous tree. At first, I thought it was just a silly phase. But by Sunday evening, I realized this wasn't going away. My ruined tree had somehow become popular. And that's when an idea began to form in my mind. If the HOA thought they humiliated me, maybe just Maybe I could turn their stunt into something they would regret forever. The weeks that followed were interesting. Every morning when I stepped out onto my porch, I'd find new faces gathered around that half-cut oak tree. Some were college kids with cameras, others were families on road trips, and a few were even professional photographers chasing the latest viral trend. The hashtags started popping up online. Hashtag half-tree, hashtag HOA fail, hashtag broken beauty. The tree became famous. Local bloggers wrote about it, calling it a symbol of resilience in the face of pettiness. Even news stations started showing up, filming short features about how an HOA's attempt to control one man's property turned into a community landmark. The irony? The HOA hated it. Suddenly, their carefully controlled neighborhood image, the pristine lawns, the identical mailboxes, the uniform paint colors was being overshadowed by a half-sliced oak that they themselves created. One evening, I received a notice from the HOA. They called the tree an eyesore and demanded I remove it immediately. I almost laughed. This wasn't just a tree anymore, was a movement. Removing it would have been like tearing down a monument, so I wrote back. I told them that since they had initiated the damage, and since they had transformed it into this bizarre spectacle, I considered the tree not just part of my property, but also part of the county's culture now. If they wanted it gone, they'd have to take me to court. And honestly, I kind of hoped they would, because the more they pushed, the worse they looked. By now, I wasn't just fighting for a tree. I was fighting for my home, my rights, and strangely enough, the hundreds of people who had grown to love the half-oak as if it were theirs too. But the real twist, I hadn't even begun to turn the situation to my advantage yet. 'Cause while the HOA saw an eyesore, I saw an opportunity. One that would change everything. You know, when I first saw that butchered half-tree standing awkwardly in my yard? I thought it was nothing but a scara. Wound left behind by the arrogance of the HOA. But I had no idea that this so-called scar was about to become the crown jewel of the entire county. It all started small. A jogger passing by stopped one morning, squinted at the odd sight, then took out his phone and snapped a picture. Later that same day, I saw him standing across the street, chuckling with a group of his friends, pointing at the tree and taking selfies. At first, I felt embarrassed. I thought they were laughing at me, mocking the misfortune of my tree. But then, one of them yelled out, "This is art, man. This looks like something you'd see in a museum." I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning. By the next week, a few more strangers came by. Some were locals who had heard rumors. Some were just curious neighbors. People slowed their cars as they drove past, craning their necks to look at the strange half-tree jutting into the sky like some modern sculpture. Then one Saturday morning, I opened my front door to find 3 young women setting up a tripod and posing in front of the tree like it was the Eiffel Tower. They were dressed to the nines, all done up for a photo shoot. I stood there on my porch, coffee mug in hand, baffled. One of them noticed me and sheepishly waved. "Sorry, sir. We'll be quick. This tree is amazing. Everyone online is talking about it." "Online?" I muttered. That's when I pulled out my phone, typed into a search bar, and sure enough, there it was. A picture of my mangled tree had gone viral on social media. A local blogger had snapped a photo, captioned it "half a tree," doubled the story, and the post exploded. People were sharing it, making memes, and even creating digital artwork inspired by it. I scrolled through hundreds of comments. Some laughed at the absurdity. Others debated whether it was vandalism or art, and a surprising number defended it as a symbol of resilience, of beauty and imperfection. The HOA had intended to shame me, to humiliate me. Instead, they had accidentally created the most famous tree in the county within weeks. My quiet street was no longer quiet. Cars lined up just to stop and take pictures. Families brought their kids to pose in front of the tree. Photographers used it as a backdrop for engagement photos. High school seniors came in their graduation gowns, snapping portraits with my half-tree like it was a rite of passage. When I thought the storm between me and the HOA was finally over, I learned that truth things were only just beginning. You see, the tree they cut in half had grown into more than just a tree. It had become a landmark, a symbol, a rallying point. For people who were tired of being pushed around by rules and regulations that made no sense. Every weekend, people showed up in my yard with cameras, tripods, and drones. They wanted to take selfies with the half-tree that stood tall. One side bare and wounded, the other side green and full of life. At first, it annoyed me. Strangers walking across my lawn, influencers tagging me in posts, kids climbing the stump as if it were a stage. But slowly, I realized something. The tree was speaking for me in ways I never could. It told the story of resilience, of survival, of standing strong even when half your life has been hacked away. The HOA didn't see it that way. To them, it was a mess, an embarrassment, a monument to their failure to control me. So, in a move that shocked everyone, the HOA announced that they were planning to remove the entire tree. Not trim, not prune. Remove, gone. That announcement sparked outrage not just from me, but from the entire county. Neighbors who had once stayed quiet now had something to fight for. Photographers organized petitions. Families who had taken yearly holiday pictures by the tree came to my door asking how they could help. And then, the story hit the local news. The segment aired on a Friday evening. The headline: Man's tree cut by HOA becomes town landmark now. HOA wants it destroyed. By Saturday morning, hundreds of people were standing in my yard, holding signs, chanting, taking photos, and live streaming the protest. Cars lined the street. Drone footage spread on social media. My home had become the center of a movement I never asked for, but one I was now proud to lead. The HOA tried to fight back. They sent cease and desist letters. They called the police to clear the gatherings. But when officers showed up, they didn't remove the crowd. Instead, one officer stepped forward, took off his hat, and said, "I grew up climbing this tree. You're not cutting it down on my watch." That was the turning point. The HOA realized they were no longer fighting me. They were fighting the entire community. They tried to hold an emergency meeting to vote on the removal, but when members showed up, they were drowned out by reporters with cameras, neighbors shouting questions, and even local politicians who smelled an opportunity to win favor with the people. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A local historian revealed that the tree wasn't just any tree. It was over 200 years old and officially recognized as a heritage tree planted by one of the county's founding families. That meant it was protected by law. The HOA hadn't just overstepped their authority when they cut it in half. They had committed a crime. The county launched an investigation. Fines were issued. HOA board members resigned one by one under pressure. And in the end, the association that once lorded over every blade of grass in the neighborhood collapsed. As for the tree, specialists were brought in to save it. They built supports, treated its wounds, and added protective fencing. Today, it stands stronger than ever, still half bare, still half green, but more alive than it ever was. People still come to see it. Tour buses stop. Wedding parties pose for pictures. Influencers call it the Tree of Defiance. And me, I sit on my porch and watch it all, smiling at the irony. The HOA cut my tree in half to put me in my place. Instead, they created a legend, and every time I look at that tree, I'm reminded of a simple truth. Sometimes the things that break you are the very things that make you unforgettable. So, if you ever drive through my county, stop by. Take a picture with the tree, stand beside it, and remember what it stands for. Not just a battle with an HOA, but a fight for freedom, for community, and for the right to stand tall. Even when you've been cut down. Because legends don't always grow tall. Sometimes they grow strong from what's left behind. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.